Okay. Welcome, families. I'm Jackie Bright. I'm your principal, and I am hosting with, I'll pass it to you, Amos.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amos Mikaile. I'm the counselor, and I'll give it to our program admin.
Hi, families. Welcome. I'm Dama Perez. I'm your program administrator. Thank you for being here today. We wanted to follow up on a survey that we sent out last week. Many of you have taken the survey, and really we want to take the next 30 minutes to take some of the most commonly asked questions from those surveys, provide some responses, and try to collect more questions that you might have today.
So we are asking families to stay muted, but to communicate with us in the chat. And I'm going to pass it off to Amos for this one.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. So from the surveys that we received so far, 72% of our families identified social emotional health as a reason for the choice that they selected in being distance learning or in-person hybrid. So for our check-in today, we wanted to ask you as our families, what does social emotional health look like for you or your child today? So in the chat, if you can just give a quick answer to this question, we'll go ahead and read some answers aloud. But the question is, what does social emotional health look like for you or your child today? And as you are submitting those, I'll go ahead and start reading some of the feedback that you guys have sent or put in the chat.
I also wanted to add that social emotional health has become like a huge buzzword, and I almost showed a video, but it was too not official. That just we're all being asked to do so many things, and really protecting social emotional health is a huge one. Thank you for thinking of anything that you have done today or that your child has done today that protects the social emotional health.
So some feedback we have so far, interacting with others in a safe environment, allowing time to find personal joy, connection with others outside of family, some uncertainty on how to answer this question. And then I know that for social emotional learning, like a lot of the concepts relate to like relationship skills, social awareness, and those are things that a lot of our students are missing with the distance learning.
Yep. And it is to address all of the feelings that I see also in the chat, the antisocial like environment that we're in, and depression and anxiety and all of those. So finding ways to take care of ourselves and to create environments where we're caring. Thanks for joining us. I believe this is my slide. I really apologize if I'm okay. So we are providing information to our families based on more questions that we've received for families who have taken the survey. So we did send out a video, and we have some of the information on the next couple slides. We're not going to read it all, but because it's already been shared with you in a previous video, but we really want to get to your questions. I will just restate that IVA is on an independent timeline from LBUSD because we are prioritizing the health and safety of our families in this small community. We have the flexibility to make our own decisions and move forward with all of the safety precautions in place. I will pass it over to Dama.
So in case you missed it, we did notice that a lot of the questions that families asked were included in the video that we sent out along with the survey. So we just wanted to make sure that we directed you to that survey. It's posted on Parent Square, and you can also access it on YouTube. And some of the things that were included in that video were some of our health and safety protocols that are included in the next slide.
Awesome. Whoops. I went fast. Here you go.
So we will have temperature checks. We have daily screenings for staff and students as they come in. We will be enforcing social distancing and masks. And in order to accommodate the 6 feet distance, we need to have only about half of our students on campus. So what that means is that we will be creating small cohorts. There will be about 13 kids in each class, and teachers will be rotating from class to class. So those are just a few things that were included in the video, but please go ahead and watch it in your own time. That has a little bit more information.
And I see some questions being added in the chat, which is perfect. As you have questions about the model and as we go through and as we answer a few questions, please write all of the questions you have in the chat. We know that we will not be able to answer them all. But we'll try to answer the ones that we have information for. So a couple just review pieces from the previous video is that we are going to have staggered start times for each grade level, that selecting an in-person model is going to require transportation in a way that it's never been required or asked of for families before. We keep Monday asynchronous. Our hybrid model, based on the number of families we've received results from right now, it means that we will have the ability to give students access to campus 2 days a week, because so many of our families want to come to campus. We will, oh, go ahead, Amos, say something about the schedules also.
Oh, yeah. So in the transition to an in-person hybrid instructional model, we want to keep the student schedule as consistent as possible to their current schedule right now. So when we do get to the point of the transition, we are going to have our students in pods of 13 students, and then instead of students rotating classes, the teachers will be rotating instead. And then we'll have an adjusted bell schedule for all students, aiming for limited class schedule adjustments.
Okay, we'll keep going and start answering some of the questions, starting with health and safety protocols. But as these questions remind you of other questions, keep putting your questions in the chat. So to you, Dama.
So one of the questions that was asked was what types of cleaning products will be used. IVA outsources our cleaning services, and so we will be meeting with them this week. We know for sure that any cleaners that are used will be EPA approved, part of the list, and disinfectants. And we understand that some of those ingredients or some of those disinfectants are more asthma producing. So we'll ensure that whatever the company is using are more of the asthma safer ingredients. Like I mentioned before, we will be taking temperatures upon entering school grounds for both staff and students. We will provide disposable and cloth masks for students and staff members, and those are available upon request. In the classrooms also we'll have disinfectants or hand sanitizers. Whatever our teachers need, they'll be provided as well. One of the questions was what happens if a student has symptoms and is sick or tests positive for COVID. So our plan is to contain, respond, and control. We have certain protocols for each of these things. So in the event that a student is experiencing symptoms, we will ask that they go home. The CDC has a coronavirus self-checker that we would use to help determine whether or not testing is needed. We will have test kits available at the school to send home with families so that they can do a nasal test at home with the help of a parent. If it is that the CDC recommends that we need to test for, for those symptoms. And then we're gonna ask that families monitor at home. Usually students are able to return within 24 hours once they've monitored those symptoms at home, and we're encouraging families to follow up with a medical provider. If there is exposure with someone not on campus, we would send the student home immediately, provide again a testing kit, and we would recommend testing, and the student would then quarantine for 10 days and return with a negative COVID test result. If they opt to not take a COVID test, then they would quarantine for 14 days and return to school after 14 days. In the case of a confirmed case, the school notifies the public health department. We isolate the case and exclude those students from school. We identify close contacts, right? So it is the possibility that an entire cohort would be sent home. We would provide additional disinfecting and cleaning of the classroom and any space that was used by the student who confirmed positive or tested positive. And then similar to if they are exposed, they would quarantine for 10 days, return once they had a negative COVID test. If they choose to not take a COVID test, they would return 14 days after. In this situation, the school would remain open, but potentially the cohort may transition to the online environment. And our IVA community is notified if there is a case at our school.
A couple other health and safety questions include, will students and staff be required to take the COVID test prior to attending? And we will have staff and students taking that nasal test. And we will roll that out. And also there's a question, if students are required to be vaccinated before they can attend school, will the same be true for teachers and staff? So IVA doesn't encourage all of our staff members to get vaccinated. And at this point, COVID vaccines are not mandated requirements. And also vaccine records are private health records protected as sensitive patient information. And we will inform our families as soon as anyone in California finds out whether there are vaccines for students and whether those are required. Those are really great future questions. A couple questions that we have about the hybrid model itself. So will, and I see some of these questions also in your questions here today in the chat, and please make sure all questions go to everyone, because our counselor Amos is copying the questions. So I won't be able to see any direct messages. Will distance learning and hybrid classes be taught at the same time? Yes. This is a really big deal and very distinct from other programs. Our hybrid model is going to allow for half of our students in one class to be in person, no more than 13 students in a classroom, while the others log in through Zoom. This means that if your family is selecting distance learning, you will be just logging into your classes through Zoom in the same way that you've been doing all year long. So we will not have separate classes and separate teachers for families selecting the distance learning model. If my child is not feeling well, can they attend class from distance learning? Yes. IVA's hybrid model is going to allow students to keep their class schedule whether they're feeling well or not. This sort of, I wonder if it's a question listed otherwise. If we realize, it is down at the bottom, I'm just going to say it now. Can our family switch back to distance learning if we initially chose the hybrid model? Yes. IVA's survey is open until March 17th, and so families can make their decision. But as we move forward and families find out, especially the very conservative safety protocols that we are being put in place, especially at the opening of this, as the rates are at the levels that they are. And if a family finds out it's not the program that they want for their child for the remainder of the year, the transition to distance learning is seamless. It is fine. They would communicate that with the school, and they would attend the same classes on the same schedule from at home. So that transition is nice. What is not possible is for a family to select distance learning and then move into the classroom. So if you believe that maybe the hybrid model is what your family is interested in, you definitely want to select that. Will there be an option in start times per grade level? We will have a staggered start schedule, and we know that this puts a lot more constraints on our families. We do hope in the future that we won't have to do something like this. But as we begin this process, grade levels will have assigned start times, and it will be staggered. That schedule is not finalized at this time, and when that schedule is finalized, we will communicate it immediately to our families. Amos, I think you have a busy job just copying down the questions, so I'll just keep going. Another question, how will students with IEPs be accommodated? So accommodations will continue in the way that we've done before with adjustments, and so each family will need to contact the IEP team in order to understand the specifics of their program. What will breaks and lunch look like? How will students be monitored when they take breaks? This is something that also is very conservative and distinct from other middle schools that are much larger. We are keeping our students with their pod of 13. If your family is making a decision to send your child to school so that they'll interact with hundreds of kids, this is not going to be what we envision, especially at the beginning. We are going to keep pods of 13, and pods of 13 will pick up their lunch, potentially eat their lunch on campus or take it home. We'll have their breaks and even restroom breaks so that we can sanitize restrooms in between uses. How will students be allowed to socialize in and out of class? I think this is a really, really great question. And it's one where there's going to be likely a lot more limits than what you might hope for. Students will remain in pods of 13 um, on campus at this time. So let's see, what will physical education classes look like? At this point, as we're envisioning it, about a month before we really have things in place, students are going to attend physical education in the classroom that they're assigned with their pod. It's going to be just another one of the classes they can access in person, but in that same classroom with teachers rotating through. I'm sure we'll be making adjustments and learning a lot as we move forward. But at this point, in order to provide the best education that we can, that with what we know of, we're being very conservative with keeping those students together. Is there an option for students to spend more time on campus to address varying times for student drop off and pickup? At this time, this is not an option. This is something that we want to find out, find programs that can support students remaining on campus longer. It is going to be our first priority after we figure out all the rest of this. I'm going to look at the next slide, and I am going to actually exit this slide and send over the hosting abilities to Mr. McKelly so he can project what he's got.
So Jackie, I think here are the questions that I'm adding, and there's a few more slides after this. And
Okay.
a few of these questions you've already addressed.
Okay.
I still need to sort through a few of them right now. So
Okay.
you see some.
Okay. And then Dama, if there's any that you want to take, just let me know. So there's a question. Oh, my eyes are actually pulled to the third question. It's one that I think for my own child as well. Once kids are in class, will they sit at their desks all day long? We have space for students that is 6 feet of distance from other students in the room. Students will not have access to move about the room freely. That does not mean that they won't be able to lay down on the ground within their 6 feet or stretch within their 6 feet. But students will be remaining within their space during the day in one classroom, So as we imagine, oh, going to in-person is going to be some semblance of normal. It's a very different normal. It's not what we experienced in the previous years. Will we need to be tested every day or only when we have symptoms, Ms. Perez?
So let me clarify that. That is only if students or staff members develop symptoms, but we will be testing prior to returning to in-person instruction, whether that's a week before or a few days before. And I can also answer, will classrooms be well ventilated with open windows? That will be a requirement that teachers maintain their windows open.
And for families with 2 or more students at IVA in different grades, will there be a place for students to go for students who is not in class? We have a very small campus and very limited staff. We won't have additional places for students to go, but we've already had a family request having their students be on separate days. And so we are going to honor that for our sibling families as we figure out who's coming on which days. Do we have a tentative date? We definitely have a lot of different tentative dates. And actually right now, that tentative date is very similar to LBUSD. But as things adjust and as we need to, LBUSD's middle school date is April 20th. So we do have a very similar date to that. But we can't nail that down until we see the schedule and see what communication we need to give to all of you. But late April is what you can just sort of imagine in your families. Have you considered outdoor classrooms? We have, with the model that we're using right now, an outdoor classroom would be assigned to one group of students for the entire day. So it's not the flexible outdoor classroom that we imagine. We are still holding on to flexible options and we'll be able to explore them as we move forward, but we will not begin with outdoor classrooms. We do have a lot of awesome space that the PTA has given us benches and shade for. And so we look forward to being more flexible, but we won't be starting that way. What would the schedule look like for students choosing to remain in distance learning? That is going to be the same schedule as they've been experiencing, but we are still trying to figure out how many minutes can we have per class and how much time is needed in between class for the teachers to move to different classrooms and set up, because the teachers are rotating, not the students. So we're working on that, we're tweaking it. It's going to be somewhat similar to the schedule that we have at this point, but with staggered start times. In a hybrid model, will kids be with the same kids in class as they are online? We are trying to have the least amount of schedule changes as possible. So if your students have 26 kids in block 1, we're hoping that they keep the same 26 kids in that class, but there will probably be roster adjustments because we have to move from the model that we have to keeping the same kids in an available classroom three classes in a row. So there'll be some adjustments. Amos, I think we can go to the next slide. We did mention about school breaks and lunches. Dama, is there anything else to add as you heard me describing school breaks and lunches? Okay. We're looking at the grab and go lunch. We're trying to figure out what the schedule, whether that means that students eat lunch on campus in their classroom in a space that only they're allowed to be in with their pod, or do they take it home? So as soon as we have our family survey results in, we'll be able to nail down the schedule and have a more firm answer for that. Will distance learning have a morning or afternoon only block? We will not. So because we are having our classrooms, full classes access the classroom, whether they're in person or zooming in, this means that we don't have to have a morning block and an afternoon block. So we're putting a lot of supports in place so that students who are at home receive additional support, while teachers have support for navigating kids at home and kids in front of them. What will uniforms look like? You guys, that's the question. Almost every other night I have a dream. Should I say to families, no uniforms this year? Should I give you a survey? Are you survey exhausted? This is one of the most fun questions that I feel like when we figure this out, we should just reward ourselves with what we as a community want for uniforms and celebrate. So I don't know. Do we let kids decide that? I don't know. We'll figure that out together, but that's like the shiny project. How often will surface areas, especially common spaces such as restroom, be cleaned and sanitized? Dama, can you speak to that?
Sure. So as teachers rotate from classroom to classroom, they will sanitize their own space. We'll do one deep sanitation at the end of the day for every classroom, and then we will be sanitizing as students are utilizing the restroom. So we'll have staggered restroom breaks, have a group go to the restroom, sanitize, and then allow another group to come through.
I know that our time is coming up quick, and we can just like skip the closing and just try to answer as many questions as we can, but I do have some responses for the remaining questions on this page. One is staggered schedules. What we need to do is have our very small staff have time to process students so they're not congregated up. So our staggered schedules will not be 8:20, 9:20. It will be, is it 20 minutes in between the start of those? Is it 40 minutes? That's what we're trying to navigate. And I really am sad that you as a family don't get to make a choice with that schedule in mind. So if that schedule is the difference for you, then select in person and then let us know the schedule is not going to work for you. We are really hopeful that everything we try out this year will inform us so much so that we can do much better next year. And then one last thing I think I can answer, how much time in an online environment students in this in-person environment only will get 2 days relieved from the online world that they've been in. And those are students who are choosing to come in person. And then are there other possibilities of in-person activities, clubs, socially distanced events? I think that will roll out, especially as the tiers in California adjust. But we right now are just starting with the most conservative, safe model that we can for our small community. Amos, that's it for our questions, right? Or are there more? There's more.
There's more, and then there's a few in the chat that I think would be nice to answer at the moment. One of them is asking about smarter balance testing, and then tutoring on Mondays, if that's still happening for those families that do have tutoring.
Tutoring on Monday is continuing. We're also trying to look at other sort of, can we bring at-risk students onto campus on Monday? So we're looking at Monday as still that asynchronous day. It has advisory, it has intervention. Smarter balance testing is on. It's a reduced amount of time for the test. And there's a new program that it means that students would be able to access the test from home or in person. I think it's going to be fine. It'll happen in May. Let's see. Anything else on this page that I should try to? Will everything still be on Google Classroom? Yes. We are going to continue with the week at a glance. We want to try to over communicate because we know that that's not really possible and there's a lot of information out there. How will the pods be selected? We are going to likely select alphabetical order. And then if there's any needs from families, please let us know what those are, especially in your survey. It would be helpful for us to have one place where we're collecting that. And as we move forward, we will be able to figure out how to really nail down who are in each of those pods. Have you thought if you'd be able to modify protocols if rates continue to go down? That is one of the things that we don't have any guidance for from the CDE. So there's no, if rates decrease, here's what you can do in your schools. So we definitely are looking forward to flexibility as the rates continue to decrease and opening up more social opportunities for our students. But we only know right now the most conservative start to this. Anything else?
2 minutes left, Jackie. Should I move over to the last slides before we end?
Okay. So there's a lot of communication that we are going to be giving to our families in the next month. This includes our bell schedule as soon as we have it finalized. The adjusted class schedule will come as a result of our bell schedule and what rosters. So our families will know in advance before we switch our program over what their new schedule will be if they have any new teachers or classes. We will be assigning the 2 days a week. It would be a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Thursday, Friday. So we'll be assigning that, and we'll try to find a way that we can assign that to take your needs into account the best that we can. We're going to identify a very clear timeline where we tell you when the first day is, but before we do a first day, we're going to be doing a trial run. We're going to be doing one class at a time. One of the things that we're concerned about on campus is that we don't have enough Wi-Fi to serve our kids. So we need to slowly roll this out and make sure that it just doesn't all crash on us. We also are going to be creating and sending out family agreements for families that are agreeing to come onto campus, that their student will abide by masks and distancing, and that if they are not able to abide by that, that we will be able to switch them to a distance program. So that is going to come with a lot of student training and communication about how we have to have I really dislike the phrase when it is in regard to discipline, but how we have to have zero tolerance for safety for our community. Safety is a priority. So the survey is due March 17th. Dama.
Yes, so we have until March 17th. If you've already submitted the survey, you can go back and edit your comments and add more questions if you would like. This is going to be really helpful for us to be able to determine what the matrix would look like and how we can accommodate students and what their needs are. So please submit that by March 17th. Make edits if you need to, but we will be locking it on March 17th because we need that information essentially to provide a matrix. I would say too, with this, if you are considering the in-person instruction option, please opt into that. It would be easier for us to transfer your student to a remote learning opportunity if they started with in-person, but it would be a lot more complicated if they started with remote learning and then wanted to transfer to in-person. So consider that as you're taking the survey. And again, continue adding your questions. Your questions are really helpful to us.
And then there's, where do we access the survey? The survey is on Parent Square, but Dama, I wonder if in these last couple minutes, you might be able to find the survey and see if you can link it in the chat. And then Amos, let's do this closing. You guys, I know that we probably could sit here for like 2 hours and have lots of questions. We are going to take all your questions. We're going to make sure that they're all answered in the newsletter that's coming out on Monday. So thank you for the questions. I apologize for the ones we're not able to answer at this moment. Can you please, if you have the time, the bandwidth, the mental space, can you please put something in the chat that you realize or that you want to consider or that you appreciate? And I'll just start us off by saying, I appreciate our small community where we can care about the needs for each other. And I appreciate the need for safety as the highest priority for our students. Go ahead and tell us what you think. And then Amos, while Dama is finding that survey so we can put it in the chat, we'll just read a couple of these.
Cool, I can start. I see, Kimberly, I appreciate how hard you're working for the health and safety and education of our students. Jolene, I appreciate IVA. And then LaShonda writes, I appreciate the open communication regarding reopening. Thank you for the updates.
I appreciate IVA's taking the time to really map out the safest plan possible. We appreciate you, teachers and staff, appreciate the care and consideration of our well-being that you put into this. And I realize the protocols and I appreciate my teachers. Thank you, Brooklyn. I appreciate IVA staff and faculty for their work.
I thank you. This process is a beast. You are looking out for the best interests of everyone, and everything will work out just fine. Thank you, IVA, for taking this seriously and putting together a very thorough plan to get kids and teachers back on campus safely. I appreciate you, Ms. Bryant, for all your efforts to reopen, in addition to everything else you do. Thank you.
And I saw Kimberly, I want to consider having PE outside. We do too. We're trying to figure it out. But I'm not sure that we'll be able to roll it out in the very first trial of it. And then we got a teacher. I appreciate all the concern and questions from parents. Teachers have the same concerns and questions, which is what makes this so challenging. I appreciate how hard it would be to host this Zoom meeting, thanks to the admin team. And from students, I realize which direction to choose because in-person is easier to switch to online than vice versa. Thank you for saying that. That's a really good summary. I appreciate how deeply we're thinking about the aspects of this. And I appreciate that you are willing to not know and we're being transparent because there's a lot we don't know, but we want to find this out for all of us. Amos, any more?
Yeah, I'll read a couple more. I appreciate all the effort to get IVA students back into the classroom. I appreciate the work and caring thought put into this process. I was a high school admin for years. I can't imagine doing this. And I appreciate the communication. I want to consider whether it is worth changing up my child's schedule so close to the end of the year in order for them to get more social contact. And thank you, IVA.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was very interesting from the survey so far is that almost everyone put that the decision they're making is because of social emotional health. And that was whether they were coming in person or remaining distance learning. We know that this decision is very personal for your family and that You are your best resource for making this. We will definitely make sure to add any answers that we have to questions you've provided. And thank you so much for providing questions here and in the survey. And then there is the survey link. So click onto that right before you leave. But you guys have a good day. We will be communicating with you again soon. Take care. Have a good day, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Oh,
you. Bye. Thank you.
thank you. Huh. Dylan, you have a baby sister. Oh, so sweet. Hi, baby.
Thank you guys. Hang in there.
Thank you. Thank you, Alyssa. Hi, Kathy. Good to see you.
You guys did great. So hard, so hard.